Hello, hello. Welcome. Thank you for turning up. Good to see you. Good to see you. It's been a bit of a week again, hasn't it? I keep thinking it's going to be a quiet week this week, and then a few things happen, don't they? But it's good to hear. Just good to see you here. I'm going to switch this on. Look. Oh, Jesus. No, let's put a little bit of bit of jaundice on. Too much jaundice? Yeah, that's a bit middle one. That's it. Good. Welcome anyway. Thank you very much. It's been good. It's been a busy day, and then I look back and I think, what the hell have I done today? So absolutely minimal, but it's good to see you. I am just going to talk about really, by all means, shove some comments in there, and I will do my best to give you my worldly advice, for what it's worth, on stuff, especially if you've got questions about stuff that's happening over the week and whatever, and you just like a perspective. It doesn't mean it's right, but it's just based on stuff I sort of could sort of guess about it. So yeah, I mean, first of all, we've got the Clapham review. First of all, I've got to actually say I had to put this in on a April Fool. What did any of you do April Fools? It seems to be so out of date nowadays. But I put this one in. That's what I put in. I just left it like that, actually, just to see. I thought I'd get a bit of flack for it. I thought people would say, "Yeah, you know what you," and then they'd pick out a load of stuff was why I shouldn't go for it. It sort of it convinced a few. So just thought I'd sort of ruffle a few feathers. I don't think it did too much though, but certainly get that. And my friend Mike Pennant up country, he did apply for it to be a police and crime commissioner. That is PCC, in case you don't know. Yeah, so he did that before. So he had the old photos. So he stuck another fake one in just to alarm his competitors, his would-be competitors. Hello, Ollie. Hey, Harry, do you need to be an SFO to join Armed Response? SFO, Specialist Firearms Officer. Yeah. Do you have to be an SFO? Do you have to be Armed Response? Yeah, you have to be an authorised firearms officer first. You have to be a police officer first. And then you have to be a firearms officer. You become a authorised firearms officer, AFO. And then you can apply to be either stay at that level and do things where you don't need to speed around in cars. And then you become an ARV officer, Armed Response Vehicle. And then you can actually start going into SFO, which is Specialist Firearms Officer, which is within the policing, from ARV onwards, if that's what you want. A lot of people choose not to do that. It is more specialist on the armed response side of things. But others, to be honest, I preferred, I probably wouldn't have been any good at it anyway, but you don't know. But I preferred doing the ARV because it was far more spontaneous and you were pretty busy all the time with all police stuff, whereas SFO was quite a lot of waiting around. When you got the adrenaline, it was big adrenaline, but it was very short periods of time. So, and then you've got the counter-terrorism specialist firearms officers, the CTSFOs. And so from SFO, you can go out, and that's really where you're sort of abseiling out of helicopters and stuff like that, or Gucci stuff. But, warrants, just as SFOs will do. SFOs in our force, they do a thing called MAST, Mobile Arms Support Team, something like that. Forgot it already. But basically, ARVs do the car interceptions, obviously, but so do MAST and the plainclothes side of things. So that's that. Okay, Ollie. Talking about the Clapham review, that was quite. I won't lie, that was excellent from the police. It wasn't a dead cert. People say, "Oh, it's like the police marking their own homework." Believe me, Tom Windsor was the one who stripped 50,000 people from police resources. That's 20,000 uniform, 30,000 civilian support staff. So unless you're saying all the civilian support staff were doing nothing, then someone had to do their work. So uniformed officers left suddenly had to cover a lot more areas. And obviously the first thing, they had to sell some police stations, and they had all the Theresa May's thing. And forces were forced to sell the family silver, so to speak, to stop having to basically not replace police officers. They wanted to keep feet on the ground as much as they could, boots on the ground. So, that was it. Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services, all right, just for your information. HMIC used to be is that sort of things. And the FRS with the fire has attached itself to it. And it says, after reviewing a huge body of evidence rather than a snapshot on social media, we found that there are some things the Met could have done better, but we saw nothing to suggest police officers acted in anything but a measured and proportionate way in challenging circumstances. Exactly what I was saying in my, ignoring all the hype, ignoring thinking, have they got it wrong here? Have they got a little bit of velocity? So ignoring all of that, I hit it in my vigil. You don't bring a megaphone to a vigil type YouTube thing that I did, and because this hadn't come out, and I was just, let's just look at this as a copper, and I was explaining basically the police officers were doing no more than what you would do to get from one side of Glastonbury to another by pushing yourself through the crowd, and yet this crowd were in their faces, you effing this, you killers, and all this sort of thing, and police officers where they were pushing were just pushing people back, and that was pretty much it. And they didn't like four arrests of people who, when you're a police officer, and this is what people don't understand, when you think, okay, decisions made, we need to move these people now because there's a massive COVID risk, 1,000 people like that, and they're stirring things up. So that decision was made. So don't blame the police. That was blame the government. Don't vote for them next time if you disagreed with it. That's what you do. The police, can you imagine if they decided, no, I'm not going to. It went from a vigil, didn't it, at 6 o'clock where there's like 200 people and all the protesters came with something else to complain about, they might felt it was completely legitimate. I'm not putting that down, but it was illegal. All right. And that's why it happened. And it was terrible to see all these things. Policing is not pretty when you have to lay hands on. And I also thought, isn't it a bit strange how there's so much equality? And sometimes when you put in a tweet, it's disgraceful. This female officer was beaten in the face by this man. And you'll always get somebody say, why should she being female make any difference? And you can understand why they say that. Because in a time where equality, women, men, they can do the same job and whatever. Obviously there's physical differences, and there's, males are stronger and women have got better, more skills in other areas than men. It's all science, all right? So let's not pretend we're identical. We're not identical, but we got to celebrate each other's differences, I think, But suddenly, when police officers arrest a female who's kicking, screaming and struggling, you shouldn't do that. After all, this was after a vigil. It's hypocritical and it's outrageous. And it went on. So Tom Windsor, this is the one who actually destroyed the police force under recommendations by request by Theresa May and all that. So Tom Windsor, he is not a fan of the police. The police do not like him. They really blame him for destroying the police service. And he's head of the inspectorate, Her Majesty's Inspectorate. He's the head of it. The police don't like him. So the police thought, do you hear that we then? I'm no longer we. It's nearly a year I've been out now. The police thought, well, this could be interesting. What's he going to say? And then he says, after reviewing hundreds of documents, body-worn video from police officers at the vigil and other media, and conducting interviews with the police, the organisers and politicians inspectorate, found out, number one, police officers that they did their best to peacefully disperse the crowd. They didn't go in punching and kicking and all that. And there was no shields, no dogs, no CS spray, that sort of things, right? Police officers remained calm and professional when remained subject to abuse. We all saw it. There's no police officers shouting and screaming at protesters, but it seems to be when people think there's an exemption in protests where you can just thoroughly verbally abuse police officers about an inch from their face. Police officers did not act inappropriately or in a heavy-handed manner. And do you know what? I bet you that is watching the body cam footage, because that's a lot of that can't be released because the Met can't say, look, here's our side. And then they've got all these faces that it would just be a massive blur. So they can't show. And plus, a lot of it, they've got facilities to use it as evidence and prosecute files. They haven't got a huge media capacity to then filter all these things and send the best bits to the media. And then you could say, oh, it gets into a tit for tat. But basically, I bet that review party saw those videos and went, oh my God. I wouldn't be able to put up with that for 10 minutes, let alone an hour, 2 hours. I bet you that was what it was like. Because I know what it's like behind the camera. Yes, I heard about the centralized emails and all through it. Right, we're going to talk about that. That's next. So that's good news. But everyone's just saying, oh, it's a load of rubbish, isn't it? It doesn't mean anything. The police are just covering up. But and a lot of people fell on the bandwagon on that one, including Priti Patel, saying, oh, yes, it was very worrying. I'm going to have a review, including Labour leaders, Liberal leaders, and none of them are actually saying, including, I love firefighters, they're a top bunch, but their Federation Union are a world of their own, and some of them are extreme left. Let's say if you look at their private accounts like I do, because they don't know I know who they are very anti-police. And when they put that thing out about saying that they're disgusted at the behaviour of the Met Police and all this, how they treat women and all that, it was disgusting. And the firefighters, the firefighters sent so many complaints. And I got so many messages saying, look, that is not how we feel. This has nothing to do with us as firefighters, and we shouldn't be commenting on it. And they're absolutely right. So I have nothing against firefighters on this. This is the union, which is a bit of a militant one. So treat them with a pinch of salt. Have they apologised? No. Has anyone apologised? No. Does anyone say, oh, yeah, we got that wrong? No. Nobody apologises today. That's the way we are today. Quite a bit of bad press. Yeah, the Met. And then there's that neo-Nazi guy being arrested. Good shot. He's out of there. I think 30,000 officers over a period of time. Unfortunately, you're going to get some people in. I don't know how long you've been in. Maybe you know more than me on that. I read, I can't remember how long you've been in. It's all the police need, to be honest. And because suddenly everyone will make out that all the police are neo-Nazis. I mean, it's so boring that they do all that all the time. And yet, if a police officer is, I deal with some nasty people. If I treated the public as if they're all nasty people, it wouldn't have been looked upon very well. Let's look at this then. Okay, what we got here? Let's discuss this. Yes, I heard about the centralised emails of North Yorkshire and other forces across the country. I imagine it's due to the accountability of tweets. Right, let me get into this. I didn't want to get too boring and get a load of evidence and say, look, this, because I'm just going to give you a flavour of what it's like. Now, this has been going on for years. Somebody's been looking at it a little bit more. You've got two you've got forces that are very social media minded. Northampton, yeah, and you've got Devon and Cornwall, my one, very, very social. They saw the benefits. It's a little bit with neighbourhood policing. How can you measure preventative policing? How can you measure how much crime you've prevented? What, by comparing last year's with this year's? Well, were they doing no preventative last? There's certain things that are very difficult, if not impossible. There's too many variants. There's a bit, it goes all the way through, and I'm very suspicious of statistics. Well, basically, what you've got is the National Police Chiefs Council, the NPCC. You'll see that quite a lot. So they sort of represent the chiefs of nationally. They got, and I think I'm right in this, but I think they're linked or part of the NPC, but they got the DPC, which is the Digital Public Contact, and they did a report. And basically what they did is, I think it's a good idea. It's going to mean that communication will be more formal than ever. Okay, well, we'll talk about that in a minute. They did a report like this, and they were basically looking into, and they put out mainly, I believe, on their corporate accounts, and that's where the issue is they put out a sort of questionnaire, a survey on what people wanted. And guess what? A lot of people who follow corporate accounts will have very set minds, and some of them will be quite against the individual accounts. Because they presume that local officers should be, they're doing it whilst at their desk instead of being out on patrol. Well, I can say that 99% of my tweets I didn't have time at work. They'd be at home. I'd do them afterwards. And so that wasn't the case. So they've done this report, and I tell you what, somebody has gone. I mean, I know they're the Digital Public Contact, and they show you what they're looking at, but they have gone to town with their diagram plans. And do you know what? Yes, I can understand certain bits of it, but some of it, why is it this complicated? The public want to engage with their police service, not lots of different individual teams within the force. Now, that is a thing I've heard before. They'd rather have, this is what I've heard, is that some people like to have just a few accounts and they get their information. But you only get that if you have a very small selection of survey, which doesn't involve the individual accounts. Because when we do our own surveys, 94% of 3,500 people said they preferred individual accounts. Now, when it's based against, I'm a great favour of both. You need your corporate account. I mean, it just goes on. I mean, it's the dullest. I'm glad I wasn't in that lecture, shall we say that? You know, I'm sure there's an awful lot of work put into that. But what has it shown when your initial facts, your statistics are wrong? So how come theirs is so contradictory to what we get on ours? And you'll probably find it somewhere a bit in the middle. So I think you should have corporate, where you need your official, you know, right, what is the official view on this? I'm going to look at Devon and Cornwall Police website. Yeah, that's what I'll do. If I was in Northampton, I'd look in Northampton. If I wanted to know what my dog handler was doing, am I going to look at the main dogland department? Or sometimes I just might want to look, I'll get on with Jimmy. I have a little chat with him. He's really good at getting back to me. I like the way he's, you know, the level it is. I like a bit of humor. I like a bit, you know, that's all good. So I can get that. I think they've panicked and they're getting a big mallet and they are hitting a nut that isn't there, because the word is as well with this, is they're concerned that people phone in, they put on someone's tweet and they've gone on holiday and they go, my house is being burgled, I'm being attacked. Well, we've all seen it where they say, you know, please do not report crime here. And for most people, that's pretty obvious. I can honestly say to you, since 2016 to 2021, when I left the police, I didn't get one crime reported on mine. What I did get was somebody who was DMing, who's a private message, and a little chat about something. And they said, oh, yeah, you know, I was sexually abused when I was a child. And so that's why I'm so. Now, as a police officer, I couldn't leave that. It's really important that the evidence, if that is taken further, is collected correctly. And so therefore, it would be the worst thing for me to say, oh, right, okay, well, what happened exactly, you know? I played by the rules of which Devon and Cornwall Constabulary Police set me at the beginning. And it said, look, these are a few suggestions. If this is what happens in your accounts, this is what we suggest you do. And so, I mean, I was checking mine every day anyway. But I just said, right, okay, you've obviously highlighted that. There are people who will help you that very sensitively, help you with that. If you want to take it further, would you like me to get someone to contact you, or would you want to ring 101, explain the situation to them? And nowadays you could actually do that on email as well. But if you wanted to phone someone, and importantly, if you don't get a success and you're delayed and you can't get through, get back to me. Okay, so now I know that that person did go and ring the 101, did get met, did do statements and things, and the process went through. So that's how to deal with it. I think it's an excuse, because as long as you've got, this is not a formal account, please do not report crime here, unless you're suddenly getting, I didn't get any of those. And so how many times is this happening? You know, how many times? So Twitter, they don't think I'm going to report a crime on the Force website. And I think the directive was they wanted more Twitter so that people could report it on Twitter, and therefore they're getting less groups. Now, the problem with that is that, say I'm doing my individual account and I'm seeing the benefit of me putting a little bit of effort. I'm going to say at this scene, I'm going to take a photograph of a lens on the ground level that is nice, quite a colourful lens. It's not a fatal road traffic collision, but I'm just going to put a tweet saying, icy roads this morning, just go steady out there. And it'll be a nice colourful lens on the road with a blurred background of trees, a hedge and a car on its side. You know, I wouldn't choose a fatality, that sort of thing, yeah? Now, that takes a little bit of effort. Now, what if that's going to go into a group thing? Am I going to bother? If I do, it's not going to be nearly as much, is it? So I know local journalists are very worried about this as well, because they know then they get a lot of their local information and for their newspapers and things from, you know, I know they would. I knew things when I would put it on, but that goes both ways. I want certain things to get out in the public. I want the public to see what good work the police were doing, so that when they were asked for another 20p a week on their council tax to pay the police council tax, that they went, oh yeah, I know what they do around here. It's good. Without that, they're not going to know that. And what you're just going to get is this corporate, somebody's going to vet it for one. into the more minimal. They're going to vet it, and you're going to have someone probably, I fear it's happened before, and there's just absolutely no character in those accounts. That's the problem. People don't know who they are. And I've said for a solution, if you're forced to do that, then just put your initials there. So at least with your initials, people can see which officer it is, and they can reflect with that. It's not good, but I see once it's gone, it's gone. That's the trouble. I think it's a good idea. It's good to be that the communication will be more formal than it is informal way. We might all be chatting. I mean, that's fine. But all I would say is some people like it a bit more informal. I put it down to neighbourhood policing. As a police officer walked down the street, and they would get a bit of crime advice to Mrs. Miggins, who's left her window open, who's just about to go out shopping. Hello, Mrs. Miggins, you might want to shut the window there. That's fine, yeah. Right. I'd say to someone else, just be careful. There's a drink driver we're after him, but there's lots of reports of speeding cars, and he's driving all over the place. So just be careful after 6 or whatever, that sort of advice. And then you'll be sitting over the post and you say, oh, so what's happening with you? And you'll have a little joke, oh, you never guessed there was a bit April Fool's Day, whatever. So you got that mix. It doesn't mean it's unprofessional. That's exactly what I would be doing as a police officer face to face. And with the cutbacks of the first of the neighbourhood beat officers were the first ones to have to go, which is one of the reasons why we're in this mess. Then the Twitter was the next best thing. It's neighbourhood policing online, and you can pick and choose which ones you want. And you can't force someone. You can't go to a department of traffic officers and go, right, I want everyone to update what your jobs are. They've tried it. You've got to have motivation. You've got to believe in it. You've got to see the value in it. And most people, they can't be bothered with it. They'd rather get on with their work and do their work. No problems at all. But some people see the benefits and they want to do it. So you can't force someone to do it. So you're going to have far, far less inputs into those things. There are other ways of ensuring that it's obvious to people where to report crime. And it's a problem that isn't a problem at the moment, because it might have happened somewhere, but I bet it's probably not life and death. And you could say that about freaking anything, couldn't you? What if the server goes down on the internet, on the forced internet? It's so bad idea. I mean, if you look at I put on my Twitter account, and I put on there what my my Twitter account, and I actually put on there what my analysis is of how many. It was like millions of impressions and people viewing the tweets, and that's all discussing the vigil. Take it or leave it. I get some abuse. I don't mind abuse. It's if it's just, oh, you're just a cop pig, you're an arsehole, whatever, then I'll just block them because they're just boring. I don't get offended. I just think they're boring, and they've probably got a criminal record as long as you're armed. If they are, no, I think, why can't protesters do this? Because I think the police officers were too harsh and they were using their shields in a way where I didn't like that. Then I ain't going to block them. If we speak and we're just going around in circles, then I'll probably mute them after a while, because we've been here. We're just going to be here all night, and we're never going to agree. So I'm not going to change the world. So I'm not going to start trying. I personally think I'm right in what I do, because I'm basing it on experience, and I've been sat behind the shields with people going, and somebody said well, I was all for the police, and then I saw, look, and I've got photographs of two police officers arresting this woman, and all I said was, why are you arresting her? And they turned all shirty with me. Too bloody right. It's none of your damn business. That's the problem. People think it's their business to interfere because they're now going to police the police. No, that's not. If you've got a problem, complain afterwards. There's a very, very thorough system with the IOPC that is very biased against the police, I can assure you, to actually, you can't report a complaint and it disappears. Impossible, okay? It's logged from the very beginning, and there's time critical all the way through for your complaints, right? The reason is because what if that woman there, she's a bit drunk, she's a bit loud, and the officer says, is that Sally, whatever her name is, Sally Evans, right? Sorry if there's Sally Evans out there, I doubt it. And they go, yeah, I think it is. It's Sally, no. Yeah, she's wanted, or it could be, Jim Bloggs, he's wanting for a sexual offence. Right, okay, we're nicking him. And the guy who is complaining, who says, oh, I just saw a police officer, she didn't do it. Why are you doing? What were you doing? They're not going to say, oh, she's wanted for a sexual offence, He had no idea that those police officers haven't said to him, look, this is a dispersion order, you've got to go now, 10 minutes earlier. And then she's back again and they say, right, we've had enough now. Or they've got a curfew, they've got conditions not to be in the high street. Numerous reasons. The police are not allowed to say, and why should they, to some member of public walking by, because that's what you get all the time. And can you imagine, whatever you do at work yourselves, and there's somebody going over your shoulder and questioning your every move and questioning your professionalism and questioning whether, are you one of those bent cops picking on this poor girl? And you can see why police officers eventually say, I'd be quite short shrift with it. Go away, nothing to do with you. Well, I'm only asking her. And that was his comment. I only asked what she was. Yeah, I can imagine how you asked. I bet you repeatedly asked. And there was a whole series of photographs on this thing. But the thing is, he genuinely felt that he was right. And I think the levels of expectation of what you think you can interfere to a professional police officer's work, and there is a safety measure that if you think it's wrong, make a complaint. That's it. Make a complaint. And people do. And then there's an investigation. And then the officers will say, well, she's wanted for sexual assault. And then they will come back to them and say, we're happy with the investigation. There was very good reason to arrest her. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Totally unnecessary. There we go. That's what I think on that. I think we'll just leave it. Oh, it's past. We're getting it. Right. I'm going to see through some quicks. So I didn't ignore the ones that I don't agree with. I didn't ignore that one. All right. So I'm happy. I think we're still friends. It's your opinion. And I get it. I understand it. Some people don't want. They think, they speak to officers and they find them maybe a little bit too outspoken or whatever. I don't know. I said, yeah, just don't follow those. I don't see a lot, I must admit. Hello, Harry. Did you still feel nervous, anxious attending firearms incidents after all the training? No, I loved it. It was like, yes, come on, and you just, it's a little bit on it. I'll tell you now, every police officer, when they put a blue light on for a car, and there's a whole process involved to make sure that you can, there's anything you can do to prevent that pursuit. And then you in your mind, you're going, go on, fail to stop, go on, fail to stop, fail to stop. That's the truth. All right, let's be honest here. And there's not many. And if you find you're saying, oh, I hope he doesn't go, I hope he's doing it, you're either very responsible, or is there something else why you're not? Is it, because I think, I could have never gone over the speed limit because I felt, quite rightly at the moment, up till recently, there was no protection for officers who were involved in a pursuit which involved had a collision at the end. So the way you can avoid that is just not pursue anyone. Simple, but I think probably in the wrong job there. I say that, I can understand why they're not, because it was so bad, but your motivation to want to get the bad guy should be quite strong, because I always think they could kill my sister, my mother, with their driving. We're in a safest area. It's quite a safe area, and let's get this ended now. I've got a stinger ahead, a helicopter above. Let's do it. So yeah, no, firearms. I know there's pursuits. Firearms exactly the same, because there's a whole process you go to, and you really get a bonding with your team, and your officers. You know who they are. Just explain these ones here, for example. So we had various things. So that'd be my collar number. That one there on my arm or whatever. This was thing, and you'll see my flag there. That's not some right wing. Don't ever accuse it of being a right wing. That is thin blue line. That's the thin blue line between the public and the criminals. That's what it is. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, whoever tries to hijack it. I had that one outlined on my picture once, saying, oh, look, he's one of those. No, thin blue line. Do not taint it with some accusation. And then, of course, that was on my arms there, right, as well. So police says what it is on the tin. Sergeant was me. Operational Firearms Commander I was team leader. Red was my section. So that, say I was at Exeter and you've got other units in other cities around Devon and Cornwall, then all the red team would be on day shift, or blue team, for example, on late shift. So if there was a job about 1 o'clock and there was some red and they bled through and say 4 or 5 o'clock, I knew these had been in all day from 7 o'clock. So I was probably going to use the blue ones to do the house entry. Do you know what I mean? Simple things like that. So that's the idea on that side of things. It's you do so much training, it became second nature, and it was fun, and it was very enjoyable when you got a safe conclusion. And even as a farms tactics advisor, I'd be in an office with a boss. So say I was the TA that time instead of the OFC, Operational Farms Commander. Then if I was farms tactics advisor, then it was just as exhilarating when you say, right, officers knocking on the door, go in, officers entered, and you're waiting, saying, come on. 2 in custody, 1 firearm recovered. And you're like, yes, like that. It's just immense. It's just brilliant. So yeah, there's no job like it, is it? And this is it. MPs who are critical of it, and this is why it should be invited to show how to arrest someone who is violently resisting. A police officer can role play someone resisting. Let's see how they get on. Exactly it, David. Exactly it. Policing isn't pretty. And if you say, you get massive criticism for, oh, look at this poor woman being arrested. She has a choice. She needn't have been put on the ground and handcuffed at the back. She completely didn't need it, okay? And I think people would say, look, this is aggressive. Look at that. No, they're standing there. You have a choice. If you like, you don't need to be there. You can do as they say, which is the law. Democracy is not just where they follow the law that you personally like them to follow and ignore the others. All right, that's not a democracy. So, yeah, and I think when the inquiry team looked at video footage from their body-worn cameras, I know what they're like. I've seen them. And we can't release all that to the public very often, but it is horrifying. And then you've got this person, and they're going, oh, and what you'll get is like, wow, are they going to arrest her? And I said, well, we're just thinking of whether it's proportionate at the moment, has it been done, and whatever, and it comes up to court, it's their decision. But that's what it is. It's just the facts. The facts are important, aren't they? And anyone, if you get one person and you're saying you get 3 others, and say, right, arrest them. They're not going to punch you, they're not going to kick you, but they're going to struggle. Good luck. Good luck. And we'll video it. And you'll be all hands and feet and grabbing, and the victim will say, oh, get off me, you're hurting me, screaming, you terrible. And people fall for it. They fall for it. Did they need to do that? No. They could have just quietly moved along and stopped breaking the law. For over an hour, they were trying to persuade people to move, and they didn't. So they did the next best thing. They moved them. And that, according to a lot of people, was a terrible thing to do. Yeah, and that is it. There was something here I used to use all the time. Potential warning markers, very good. Because there's various things such as subject behavior, compliance, verbal resistance. Right. This is something I used to look at. It was really, really quite useful. Things will depend on how you deal with someone. Depends what sex they are. Yes, it will, because if it's a big man, you're going to deal with them in a different way than a 4-foot tall woman. I don't care what anyone says. Age, right? 7-year-old child screaming, slightly different from a 50-year-old builder. All right? Size, strength, skill level, exhaustion. Are they knackered? Are you knackered? Injury, alcohol, drugs, mental health, weapons, vehicles, objects on the ground near them. Environmental features. Are they showing off to people around them? Get the people out of the way then. Bring them away from the people so they don't have to be the old bravado. I've done that numerous times, is to get someone away. So come on, let's just have a chat a minute. Come over here. And it gets them, they don't have to lose face in front of their friends. It calms things down. Crowds or venues in the vicinity, other dangers not associated with the incident. So, I mean, it is, can't say, so, yeah. All those things that actually people are involving to see, right, where in the right level do I go? And on firearms, we were always assessed as to what level, because you're either going to say, can you move along, or you're going to shoot them dead. And there's a lot between, isn't there? So, and that's what you're continually being assessed with. There was a big thing about this, because lock knives being officially unlawful and things, but you can use them. Yeah, basically, yes, they can, because being a police officer, it was highly likely you would be first to a scene of an RTC. It's cutting seat belts. It's it's like hangings. How are you going to? There's someone hanging in there. We've just come to this hanging. We don't know how you've got to cut them down. How do you? Oh well, is there a kitchen around it? You know. So I always carried a penknife. And so yeah, there was a big thing about that. Because again, someone who hadn't been on the streets for a while saying, yes, none of my police officers were allowed to carry knives again. That was really going to be a problem. In a way, personal accounts, thin blue line, a thin red line, and thin green line. Yes, exactly. You do. You have the green and the red for the thin blue, green. Red is for fire, obviously. Green is for medical. Blue is for polizier. Right, public only see what they want to see. Yeah, and sometimes it's because they go, oh, they're a bit shocked at the violence. And actually, what is that violence? You know, is a police officer punching someone in the head? Is it necessary? No. You know, it's not really, is it? If the guy had a knife and he was saying, I'm going to kill you, and he punched him in the head, perfectly reasonable, isn't it? Yeah, it's all about whether it's reasonable force. And reasonable force doesn't necessarily mean minimum force. It doesn't. Reasonable force might be shooting someone dead, you know, because they are just about to pick up a gun. They've already killed 2 people and they're going to kill another person. Reasonable force, isn't it? So don't think reasonable force is just minimal, no force. Do we get fighting training? Now, this is a big issue here. We don't get enough fighting training. We get officer safety training, which is all about moves and things. I had my favorites that never let me down. See, I'm not massive. I'm 12 stone. I've always been 12 stone. I always look bigger with body armor and whatever, which always helped. And I've got a big gob on me. You can imagine. It's that confidence gives you another 3 stone. It's like, gentlemen, will you just calm down a minute? Right, let's start again, shall we? Right, you know, and it's that real confidence, and you sort of own the area, and that gives you another, you know, sort of inflates you out a bit, really. And you just sure as hell hope that they comply and they don't go, who is this idiot? Jump on you. Because which did happen relatively in the last 2 years. Yeah, but so yes, you do, but not enough. It's like 2 days a year, you know. Farms officers, a lot more training anyway, generally anyway, but because we do about weapon retention. If someone grabs the front of your gun, if they do, then don't do that. You will get hurt badly. Give laws respect. You don't have to. Yeah, laws are there to be abided by. Give laws respect. You don't have an issue, right? Do you know? I've got a theory, and it's nothing against the sort of young people. Whereas before, there were people who were looking around and they had terrible sexual inequality, race inequality. You know, there were different laws for white people, for black people, for males, women, men. And so there was these big campaigns to level things up. And there's nothing now that you can do that is not protected in law. But those campaigners, some of them very well funded, need something else. And this is why my argument is that we've started looking at other things like, well, genders. I want to be called a girl, even though I was born a man, but I want to be called a girl, and I want to be called that legally. And I've got 10 million quid to help me do that. And then all this stuff came through because there isn't any of the other stuff. We live in the most tolerant country, I would suggest. There is. And so there's always problems, and there's always racism, there's always inequality still, but there are laws to protect that. And yes, we must improve these things, but does it require, I mean, the BLM marches might have been relevant in America, but completely irrelevant in the UK with the amount of impact, which they thought the police were murdering people in the cells. You know, the facts don't add up. I'm not going to go into those figures. You'll find they're remarkably low where people have actually died in the cells. Now, and if they're saying, well, twice as many people, you know, and then more black people are arrested than white, that might be true. But is it because people are arrested? Because if you look in the prisons, it's not for walking along the street. They weren't grabbed off the street and thrown in. So are there social economic reasons why that's the case, which need to be looked at? But it's a real deflection to go, look, there's a copper, let's blame him. Hey, you know, let's smash his police station windows. Do it. It's a big subject, isn't it? I ain't gonna sort it out. I can't change the world. I tried once. Doesn't work. 1940, I think. Oh, where are you going? Hi, Harry. I'm starting in July. Do you think it's worth learning a martial art, or do you think officer safety training? Right. All I would say is, no, if you're going to do it anyway, do it anyway. My son is black belt in Taekwondo, and it keeps you fit, and it's really good. You'll probably find on shifts it's very difficult to do a martial art where you need to be somewhere on Wednesday afternoon every week, because you've got shifts. You might be a late shift then. Or you could do it on lates, you can do it on nights, you can do it on day off. So you might just, you can do that to a certain extent. The moves that they do, I find, is really just, they give you a fair selection that you will go through and you'll do your training. And it's adequate, but it's not enough. And because I think one of the big problems here are people are so worried, they haven't got the backing. They ain't got the backing of their bosses a lot of the time, of the politicians, of general public when they lay hands on. So they are very nervous to lay hands on. Now, in my career, I was never nervous about laying hands on because I was bossy enough not to let people affect me. If I knew I was doing the right thing, I didn't care about anything else. But you're getting a lot of inexperienced young officers in, and they get a IOPC investigation for an assault. You're going to get complaints left, right, and centre. Easier to do without that and walk the other way, isn't it? I didn't see that criminal that was wanted for this or whatever. I'm not saying that's happening, but it's certainly encouraging it to happen. But it's that sort of, and if you've got too many inexperienced people and a very confident bad guy, you've seen it. I think you've seen it, haven't you? On wouldn't really have happened in the past so much because you always had a mix of very experienced officers who had confidence, and you'd learn off them. This is what my problem is about retaining officers, to keep that experience so that they can look back to daddy policeman who's been there for the last 25 years. You're in your second day in, and you're going to learn stuff. But the person you're looking at for your experience has been in 2.5 years. You might be all right. So the answer is do it. If you do martial arts, if you like, but if you want to enjoy it and get fit and whatever. But whatever the moves you do, don't think about learning all of them really well. The thumb locks for me and all that sort of thing with, it's just never let me down. I've got an arm trap where if I get on someone on the floor, they ain't moving, so I knew I was whatever size they were. So that was fine. And I knew that in those positions would be all right. But ultimately, to be honest, I think cops should do more boxing. But then how would that look? The officer just punched him in the face. That's because he wanted to rip the officer's head off. That's why. But let's put this one up. Right, in your retirement, what have you been doing to keep you busy? I'm climbing the walls, waiting to hear back from the Met. Looking for some things. We'll join the Devon and Cornwall instead. Looking for some things to do in the meantime to help out towards my kid. Well, I'm doing YouTube thing. I do the frontline chat with Dave Wardell on Saturday at 4:00, every Saturday at 4:00. So that's just like a couple of guys down the pub having a chat about policey stuff. Because he's still in the job, I can't talk about certain things that I tend to talk about on here. People will complain, about opinions when there's a serving police officer there. So here's that. And we have really good guests on his. We haven't got a guest this week, but we do have very good guests from all over. Retired cops who've now become comedians. We've got forensics guy coming up. We had mounted police on the Met. He came in last week, and obviously Dave's dog handler. So really, really good people like that. And of course, we've had Nick Knowles and people like that on, John Nichols and all this sort of thing. Some few sort of little celebs, big celebs. So that's it. So I'm pretty busy. I've finished a novel, which is policing in the early 90s, which basically my experience is. I just called it a novel so I could say stuff and I wouldn't get into trouble. That should come out later on in a couple of months' time, probably. I don't expect anyone to buy it because it's a novel and no one buys novels, but I've written it. It's been great fun. And it's a bit like Farms and Fatals, which if you haven't got that is my main income at the moment. Still selling really well, actually. Farms and Fatals, get it on Amazon. And if you are out there, that's like the best bits of my 30 years and a little bit of my thinking. And the best bit on there really is if, for a special short period of time, if you email me on that, firearms and fatals, so firearms plural and fatals plural, at gmail.com. If you email me on that, I will send you a secure PayPal request for $9.99, and I can send you a book, signed book, personal signed book. I'll probably devalue the book when I sign it, but it's good, and it's really good. Amazon, have a look at it on Amazon. It's got a lot of really fantastic reviews and things like that. And I've sold loads of them. Honestly, I've sold thousands and thousands of them, and I'm a home publisher through Amazon. So it's just been amazing. So that's a nice little income. So just add to it if you don't mind. That'd be great. How cheeky am I being right now? So yeah, and this YouTube thing and the other YouTube, it just keeps a little bit busy. And I'm just reading a book of a mate of mine just to check out some obvious things for him and picking that out. I walk the dog, fittest dog in the world now, my terrier. He doesn't know what's hit him. So yeah, no, I'm busy. I'm really busy. And then Twitter, when this thing's happened, you've got to start firing back at people and giving them the truth, really. Yeah, I said it's adequate, Owen, but you're right. Should be so much more training when it comes to self-defense and how to handle yourself. True, because I think a contact sport like boxing or taekwondo and that side of things, my kids did it because my son did it anyway, because I didn't want. Sometimes it's fight or flight, and sometimes flight's good. Even if you're black belt taekwondo, it's time to run because there's 4 of them and they've got knives. And there's times where you think, I'm trapped, I'm cornered. Right, your fright is you can't move. Because you're so, especially if someone slaps you and you're like, whoa, that's never happened to me before. But if you're in a contact sport, that suddenly you just like, right, bang, you're straight back, you're confident, you've got to react quickly, and it gives you that confidence to get yourself out of trouble. I went to a girl who had been followed by a man. She then heard footsteps. He ran up behind her, grabbed her from behind, and this was at night, and she just swung back and kicked him full on in the stomach and ran. And that was worth 10 years of karate for her. She didn't have to do any fancy stuff. Wah, 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 wah. She just kicked him, but she didn't have the fright. She had that action and then go. It's that reaction and then run. And he's like, whoa, I'm there, So all that karate for that one kick saved her a whole host of trouble. So that's why I really say it's good stuff. So yeah, and it should be in the police like that as well. But how do you cope with being an armed? I just loved it. I just loved it. How do you cope with being an armed police officer? I think this was where is it? I'll be back. Oh yeah. All right, this isn't illegal because there's an empty one. That's my last one I ever shot in the force. That one there. It's the last one. That's it. Last shotgun one. That's it. So I love shooting. And I love the exercises that we had. There was multiple targets, fast, close, long distance, slow. And then you got the scenarios that you get where you're with your colleagues and you go through like a B range where there's loads of walls and whatever, and they rearrange it, and you're clearing buildings, and they've got stooges or targets, and all there's people shooting back at you with paintballs. And some people, honestly, we always said, we were knackered and we were a bit moaning, going, oh God, it's terrible. We go, hang on a minute. You'd pay 200 quid for that on a stag do. You can't complain, but you're being assessed on each one. Whereas a paintball, you're like, you can imagine you do that. Each and every round has got to be accounted for. So yeah, I love being an armed. And they gave me a big fast car, an X5, a very powerful car to rant around the countryside and do serious stuff with, and it was lovely. Saw the comedian on front line; he was brilliant. Yeah, he was, wasn't it? We had a couple weeks in. I'm going to see Arthur Smith. Oh, it's just so funny. He's a cracker before as well, so he was brilliant. And then we had Paul, of course. What's your thoughts on police force being renamed to service? Oh, here's a big argument, isn't it? I'm a bit old-fashioned. I think we should have stayed as force, because service has meant you get you're a public servant, and it's a very well-known thing where police officers say, yeah, well, the public are the police of the public. But people have got confused with that, and they think, yeah, so you need to do what I say. No, I don't have to do what you say, because if it's wrong, then why would I do what you say? I'm not. Oh, you wouldn't treat a waiter like that, would you? So no, I'm a servant of the crown. So the Queen gets a government in. You vote for a government to set these laws that the public either like or don't. If they don't like it, they complain with their MPs and they put pressure on the government to change the laws. All party agreement with the COVID restrictions. If you don't like the government, you vote for another one the next time round. That's how it works. That's called democracy. But some people got a bit confused, and they think that democracy means it's democracy until I think different from the majority, and therefore, and especially if I'm stuck in a little echo chamber and I believe the whole world thinks what I think and I'm being a crusader. No, you're not. You're just bored. You need to educate yourself a little bit more with the facts out there. What's your thoughts on the police force? But yeah, so I think we should have been forced. Unfortunately, there are quite a few politicians in the police now. There's beers and doers. There's senior officers. I can't. Do you know what? My force, I can't criticise. Devon and Cornwall, real people, good leaders. You'd always get your one now and then. You'll get that anywhere. I think somewhere where the public is, or the media is there, and they are so scared to move. And some are, they want to be a police officer and they want to be the highest rank as quickly as they can. And so they don't ruffle any feathers. They sort of go in there and they're not really interested whether it's the right thing to do for their officers, to support their officers. Well, if they're getting a hard time, if I support them, I'm going to have a hard time. Will I get promoted? A little bit of that. Well, it's probably not as black and white as that. And there's doers and there's police officers, I'd say, like very much more in the Devon and Cornwall police, who are there to do policing, to do the right thing in the community, to do the right thing for their officers, to highly motivate them. Northampton's another one that shouts out at me with that, supports his police officers. Somebody who comes in with a rubbish criticism that's backed up with no fact, they'll be put to task on it by the chief, very professional, but they'll deal with it in the right way. We need more of that. We need some more spine out there, please, and less politicians. I'm not criticising Cressida Dick. I think she's in an impossible position. She then needs to go to a Labour lawyer who needs to tell her how to run her job, who has no experience and no knowledge in it, who just wants cheap votes to guarantee him his job, And then she's got to go to a Conservative Home Secretary and please them and the Prime Minister. An impossible job. There's something wrong with the system there, I think. So I'm not blaming them. And I know she was brilliant commanders. She was, cared about her staff. But then it seems to be that the frontline police are left to be, right, the politicians want someone to blame. Because I tell you now, if the criticism with the vigils and all that weren't on the police, who do you think the public would be angry with? One guess. It would, wouldn't it? It would be the politicians. They'd be banging it at number 10 saying, this is disgraceful, we want freedom of the streets and all this sort of thing. Of course it would, wouldn't it? So it's convenient for everyone to have a good go at the police. There's a copper over there, let's blame them. Death calls, to be honest, how do you deal with attending death calls? I dealt with over 150, probably 200 fatal road traffic collisions. To be honest, I found that I put a blog or a podcast, whatever you want to call it, on dealing with death in the police. So you might want to have a look at that one. It's on my channel. And basically, in summary, I found that once they're dead, and the soul's gone, and it's no longer a person as far as I'm concerned. You have a respect for the body, but it is like a code. The person is gone. The relative probably wouldn't recognize the expression the body is making because the soul is gone. I'm not religious, but do you know what I mean? The person, the live person is gone, the soul is gone. Whereas, luckily, because I was road traffic, I didn't have to deal with too many people who had been not seen for 4 weeks on a hot August, where they sort of melted into the bath sort of thing. So yeah, that's not so pleasant. Don't like that. Smells, that's what it is. Smells, not good. But you don't get that many. Obviously, hangings are absolutely horrendous. devastating, especially if it's involving a young person. And that's real danger area for PTSD. I know police officer who's on my section who badly, I actually write on that book about that incident. You know, it can get you. It can get you. So, but I did think a lot of the time with road traffic collisions, that's why I was involved with a lot of road death prevention whilst doing the farms, whilst doing the traffic, was I'd look into a lot of eyes, dead people's eyes, and go, wow, 15 minutes ago, you didn't think you'd be dead. You know, it's as stark as that. They had no idea they were going to be dead in 15 minutes time, you know, because they lost it. Their driver lost it on a bend and threw them into a tree. So it is quite, you know, it wakes you up a little bit. But then you've got to bring it into perspective and go, right, there's nothing I could have done about that. But if I get involved in Learn to Live or whatever, where we do with students and try to empower them to react to bad driving if they're in a car with someone driving badly, and give them a method of how to do that. And, you know, make it socially unacceptable to drive like a twat with a load of young people in there, you know. Thoughts on COVID protests, and the one in Bristol, don't think it was about COVID, where, oh yeah, that's about whether the police van got burnt. Yeah, well, it's not, they didn't say the police van, and so there's lots of allegedly with this, but Devon and Cornwall arrested a man who has been arrested for suspicion of committing arson with intent to endanger life at the Bristol riots. So that's good. They've been arrested. So a lot of alleges, so that they've got to be interviewed and they've got to pull the evidence together and decide whether there's enough for a charge or not. So make your decisions from that. So that's good. Yeah, I think the first time there weren't enough resources, clearly, because it just sprung up. It turned very violent. The police had to back off. And it's a bit like the 2011 riots, where they just had to maintain what they could, and then there was a lot of arrests and prosecutions afterwards. And let that be a lesson to people who got carried away and think, way, we own the streets, we can do anything, we can smash cars and we're whatever, because they will go through every CCTV and body cam with a fine-tooth comb. And suddenly it's not so funny when you've got a police door washer coming through at 6:30 in the morning on in your flat door. So that's good. Second time they had the resources to deal with, and I thought it was brilliant the way they cleared the streets with dogs, horses, people saying it's terrible. There was a bit of shield stuff. I couldn't see at the bottom of the shield. Funnily enough, they weren't showing the video of what's happening at the bottom of the shield. I know with one, they were grabbing the shield. Again, they had an option. They could have left. It was no longer a lawful protest. Please, would you like to leave? Please leave. Please leave. Tell me how many times you do that. How many times do you ask someone, please leave? Would you leave? Is there anything I can say? We used to say this all the time, and I'm sure there will be. Is there anything I can reasonably say or do which will make you peacefully leave? Otherwise, I will have to use reasonable force. That's the process, standard. We don't just pile in there. Doesn't happen. But you won't get that on the media or the TV because it's boring, isn't it? They're not going to go, look at this officer here for 20 minutes talking to this person, getting no reaction, you know? And it's like, oh, look, they're grabbing your shield. Okay, well, what were the injuries to the protesters? Minimal or none. So is that reasonable force? Do you think the Parisian police are going to be considered that was outrageous? What's your other suggestion? I'll stick you in a uniform in the front. You've got to clear the streets. Crack on. Good luck. But make it look pretty. You know? We're there. 59. 59. I'm going to go. What do you think of the new police constable degree apprenticeship? That's a big subject, isn't it? I do talk about that on other ones. Malik? Could we talk about that another time? Because we've run out of time. Good and bad. We need people with degrees. It's great if you can get a free degree. I think there's a lot of people, again, to hemorrhage from the police once they've got their degrees. I don't think it's going to do an awful lot for the police, because after 30 years, your new employer is going to want to know what you did in the police, not that you've got a degree that everyone's got. You know, minimal value, probably struggling with retention. If I was a student, I'd be getting a free degree by the police. Thank you very much. Yeah. Danny, you've got Israel. Oh, okay. Israel Malik, I've applied, been accepted, and just waiting for my day one assessment. Seems like a good idea through. Does seem a bit extensive. Fantastic. Brilliant for applying. I would not put anyone off from joining the police. It's just different from when I did it. And I think that it's turning, you know. I think suddenly people are going, do you know what? I think the police are. And then you get something like this bloody neo-Nazi thing turn up just to mess it up again. But I think most rational people know that that doesn't mean every copper is a neo-Nazi. I'd like to think the British civilian isn't stupid enough to think that, you know. At the end of the day, do you really care about what piece of paper a person has if they're responding to your panic alarm? Yeah, exactly. But we need people with degrees. We need people with that. We need a mixture of that. And you'll probably find, I think, it's something like a third of all police officers have degrees already, you know. But we need people. Well, that's why there's a 40,000 nurse shortage, is because they insisted they do a degree. And you've just lost a lot of brilliant bedside manner people, caring people who could have done so much as a nurse, but wasn't able to. I think we'll end with that one. Thank you for the information tonight. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Buy a book if you can support. It's the only. I'll be honest with you. I do this, but it is fun and I enjoy doing it. It takes a little bit of preparation. It means I have to. I get the enjoyment of passing it on to the next generation. So you can maybe get the odd sort of nugget for me, and that's brilliant. That's all I want. There's plenty of other YouTube videos on my channel, Harry Tanguy, to look at how you deal with death, how you deal with violence, and it's real, just practical on the ground advice on what I do it. How do I deal with 3 yobs shouting at me like that? What is the best way? And you've got cameras over there. How did I deal? What was the best way? In 30 years of experience, the best bits of nicking the ideas from my mates and learning through trial and error. And it will just give you that thing in the back of your head when you're on day one of yours, or just as a civilian, you know. So lovely. Thank you very much. And just a reminder on that, before I shake the camera to bits. Yeah, if you email me on that one, firearmsandfatals@gmail.com, please subscribe to this channel, because that means YouTube advertise it a little bit more. Subscribe, please like this as well. Put any comments. I will answer your comments. Sometimes I'm a bit late because I do other, like the Twitter and stuff. And if you disagree, please disagree. It's just if I just get rid of all the abusive ones who say, look, there's a neo-Nazi cop. You're all neo-Nazis. It's like, go away. Shut up. So bless you, everyone. Thank you very much. And I've got to figure out how to finish this thing, because I haven't. I wish I had what I need is a production team, but they're not here. So I've got to do it myself. Cheers, folks.